If you've been following the happenings around the UN General Assembly, you know that we're fresh off the biggest international education event since the adoption of the SDGs, the Transforming Education Summit. And it couldn't be more timely, considering the pandemic-related learning losses children around the world have suffered. So our session today will cover some of the summit's key takeaways and explore what needs to happen going forward to truly transform education. Here, in conversation, are the co-chair of the Summit's Advisory Committee, an MIT PhD who also happens to be Sierra Leone's youngest ever Minister of Education, and the founder of Africa Girls Empathy, a 21-year-old innovator who's using her free time to teach girls about coding, robotics, and STEM. Welcome, Minister David Moinina Senge and Hawa Yoki. Over to you.
Hi, Hawa. It's so wonderful to be having a conversation with you. And it's, do you remember how we met, by the way, or how we first interacted? The first time we engaged?
Yeah, I think it was through Innovate Salon, was it? That was what I remembered. I don't know.
Yes, and what were you doing then? Like, what was the engagement? What you were still in school? What was it that you were working on with our engagement?
So it was during the Ebola virus, and there was this question that Innovate Salon sent out and say, how can we ensure that learning continues through the Ebola virus? And so my idea was to use radio and television to be able to reach out to young people, to girls or students that were not in school at that time. So which was actually adopted by Innovate Salon and was pushed forward.
It's crazy because back then I was in grad school, and then fast forward many years later, after the Ebola virus disease and school closures, I was Minister of Education, and COVID was there as well, and there were school closures. As a young person, what were you thinking at the time? Did you think we prepared better? Did you think we learned from what had been started many years earlier? What's your sense of the school closure period and how we engaged on it?
From a young person's perspective, I think we learned from Ebola, and I think measures were taken in place to ensure that during the COVID, young people or students should go to school or continue their learning. But then I still felt that there was still gaps that need to be filled. Looking at the technology, the evolving technology that I felt like we were not fully ready for and prepared for yet. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I'm here in New York, and where are you?
I am in Sierra Leone currently.
I'll see you when I get there. But as part of the Transforming Education Summit, we just ended really. There's lots of conversations around where we are today as a world with regards to learning poverty, the kids who are out of school, young people who are going through with unemployment, and world leaders are making major commitments. And certainly the UNESCO and Sierra Leone is being tasked with the monitoring and the follow-up of these commitments. As a young person in Sierra Leone, in a country, what feedback, how do you think we can really monitor on these promises? How can we look beyond these promises? And how can we make it such that by 2030, the conversation we'll be having are much different from what we're having now?
I think firstly, we need to involve young people in the monitoring process, because we have seen a lot of commitment that has been made for education, and yet still there is still this gap that needs to be filled. But I feel like if young people are involved in this monitoring process, if young people are in the front of this monitoring process, will ensure that we hold you accountable for this commitment, and also from your own commitments. I feel like it's the passion and the passion and from the heart that you guys need to fulfill and follow up on these commitments. So it should not only be young people like checking in on you guys. You should have that commitment from your own perspective that this is what I want to do and this is what I want to see happen. So I and ensure that these commitments are followed through.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And actually just hearing you that it's not just the member states and the global institutions who should think about monitoring, but that young people should be part of the monitoring. And how do you think, as a young person, you might be involved in holding people accountable? What are the opportunities that you think exist to make sure that the means of engagement with young people are different? From your perspective, from you as a young person, I suppose, what from in terms of responsibility, how might more young people take responsibility?
I think by having conversation like this, because for a long time now, young people have been excluded from conversation like this, and so we are still taken back, and there's this fear that the opportunities to have these conversations with you are not there. But if we have conversation like this, it assures young people that you are ready and you are committed to follow up on these commitments and to be able to and it's also it's also whenever we want, so there is no barrier that is limiting us from having a conversation with you. So I think the first step is to involve young people in these conversations, in these spaces that is already being created.
Yeah, and I saw that happen this week. Where it was very different. In Paris at the pre-summit, there was a major call for young people to be central, and we decided then that we'll give young people the responsibility, particularly those who are on the SDG4 network and several of those global entities, to design, to have a youth-led day. And we saw that happen, led to the youth declaration that the Secretary General received. And even in the closing ceremony, about the youth being part of the movement. So I'm happy that some of those things are coming. But what you mentioned actually is a really good idea around youth being as part of the follow-up and the monitoring and the holding each other accountable framework as well. So I agree with you. And I'm curious, I mean, as a young person, what are the things that you're thinking about? What's exciting to you? Where do you think the opportunities lie in our country?
For Sierra Leone, I think we have done a really good job in terms of ensuring that young people, especially girls, stay in school. We have seen an increased number of young girls that are in school. We have seen how eager these young girls are, or these young people are, when they're going to school, and we have seen how schools are evolving, like using technology. But I think there is still a gap when it comes to using science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is STEM. There is still this gap that needs to be filled, because even though girls are eager to go to school, there is still a huge gap when it comes to them engaging in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, because of this stereotypical and cultural thing that is in Sierra Leone, where they say STEM is not for. There is more work to be done. However, much has been done, but then there is still work to be done.
Sure. And you studied engineering, right? You practice engineering?
So I didn't have a chance to go into any STEM field or as a study when I was coming up, because I was limited, or my parent told me that I need to do something in commercial or art stream. And because
But
of
but
this, but my
but
passion
the
has always been
yeah, I was just saying, but sorry to interrupt, but I think I thought you were working on something with solar and energy, right?
yeah, yeah. It was because of the passion. Yeah, it was because of the passion that I had for science, technology, and geomathematics. I was able to teach myself these things, and currently having jobs in these schools, and currently launched the Kamarayoke Innovation Center. So because of the passion that I had, and that was how I was able to follow up through in the field of science and technology.
That's so fascinating. I would have thought you did engineering, but I get, well, you did not study engineering, you do engineering, and that's
Yeah,
perhaps what really matters.
yeah,
And
yeah.
what's your feedback in terms of when you engage young people, young girls in particular in STEM fields, with regards to engineering? And you mentioned your parents wanted you to do something else, commercial studies instead of engineering. What are you doing differently now to make sure that other girls can study engineering if they choose and do engineering like you do? Because there's a scholarship now where girls can go in Sierra Leone who are doing STEM, they can go through public institutions for free. So how are you engaging them to make sure they can take advantage of that?
We have the STEM for Us by Us campaign, wherein
Mhm.
we have young people in STEM mentor young girls going to school, because this is something that I didn't had when I was going to school. I didn't visually see anybody that was
Yeah.
engaged, any women that was engaged in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But with the STEM for Us by Us campaign, and then with the STEM clubs, we have young university students going to schools and speaking
Yeah.
to young girls about STEM. And then we have our weekly engagement with these girls that are part of our STEM clubs, wherein we bring them into the innovation center that we already have. We teach them about STEM. We teach them the opportunities, the diverse field that technology has to offer, and then we let them choose. And then we also engage with the parents, because the parents are still thinking that my child can, if she's going to the she's going to the sciences, she only needs to be a doctor or an engineer. But then we engage these parents and tell them that the field of STEM is way diverse than only engineering and medicine. Yeah.
I mean, it's really inspiring what you're doing. What are the challenges that you're facing? And how can I help you? How can we help you to do more?
So for now, the challenges that we really are facing is in regards to resources. So we already have a well established center, but then we don't have the resources to manage this center. Like I said, the STEM Force BIOS campaign is mainly youth led, and it is run by youth who are in the universities. So if we have resources, that is where I think you can come in, resources and capacity building, to ensure that these young girls that we have engaged with, there is a systematic policy that can be implemented to ensure that each and every young girl in secondary school is engaged in science, technology, engineering, mathematics through the center that we already have.
Look, I think, as you said, it's
Yeah,
a
and
great
of course,
thing that we're having. Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, and of course, the stereotypes that are there is still a huge stereotype that young women cannot be involved in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So it is really up to us to be able to reach out and increase engagement in the community, and be able to and explain to people that young girls can be in STEM and do things in STEM.
Yeah, I was saying, thank you. It really is inspiring. And I recall conversations that I've had with the Minister of Youth, the Minister of Gender, And just yesterday, the administrator of UNDP, we all speak about the need to have these kinds of spaces. Same with UNICEF, with the digital learning hubs. And as you're saying, those resources that exist must be directed to support young people like yourselves who are doing the work. And so thank you for raising that up. Let's definitely engage the ministries of youth, UNDP planning, gender and education, and make sure UNICEF, and make sure that the commitments are in line to help people like you who are doing the work as well. I know I've been asking a lot of questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, just a few. So I know that you have done a lot of work in promoting innovative education in Sierra Leone, but yet still, I feel like there is still a gap that needs to be filled and closed. And as a minister, how would you ensure that young girls in school have access, have opportunities to technology as compared to other girls in different countries, like let's say France, USA, UAE? How would you ensure that these girls are exposed or use this technology?
Yeah, I think it's such an important question. There are several layers to that. One is just looking at connectivity. I think with the project Giga, making sure that people have access to the internet and information. I think the second part is the infrastructure, the resources, the devices, and which is what you're doing by making sure that, you know, there are laptops, there are computers, there are safe rooms where people can go. Then there's a curriculum, certainly, that we've been working with to make sure that people are speaking about computational thinking, they're writing code, they are learning to do it. There's an advocacy, which we're both doing, and it's in line with the Transforming Education Summit. Just now, there's something around inclusion, there's something around foundational learning, there's something around digital education, digitization, that's also digital transformation in education. And that really matters. It's that we need these concerted efforts and concerted approaches to be able to have the impact that we're having. I've been really lucky and privileged to be having this conversation with you, particularly at the end of tests. And I hope that we can continue having this kind of dialogue all around the world, virtually, in person, and certainly engaging young people as well. So thank you.